believe so. Thank you for joining us tonight. We're going to take a few minutes, let folks hop on here, but I believe we should be live and all set for tonight. We'll share this, and you can see the link for our cookie that we're making tonight and some more information on some of the auditor topics as well that we're talking about. But we'll give folks a few more minutes to hop on. A really easy recipe that we're doing this evening. It's a classic. I never even knew what the name of these cookies were. It's just a classic kind of Christmas cookie that we used to always eat and still eat quite a bit of. But when I've described them to people, or I show the picture to folks, and everyone knows, and they're called Haystacks, which I thought was a really good kind of fun cookie name to have for tonight, with us talking about agriculture tax credits and that process through the auditor's office. So we're excited.
You wonder, how did they come up with?
Well, they kind of look,
they
kind of do look like haystacks. So something fun to enjoy and to taste.
I wore my farm shirts
at
Ashtabula County Fair every year. Sells their shirts. And,
the county fair does.
I don't know, 15 of them or so.
Mm-hmm. Over the years, the county fair and that whole process, they sell different merchandise and things. So we're
speaking of the fair, they have their 4-H. What is it? A fair?
Well, for the 4-H kids to learn and see if you want to join a club. They have that coming up here pretty soon.
Yeah, I think February 21st on a Tuesday night.
Yeah. Yep. So we'll give folks just a few more minutes to hop on here, but
seems like it's freezing a little bit.
Tonight, as we go along, feel free to chat those in. Like I said, we're going to be making haystack cookies and talking about our CAUV, the agricultural tax credit that's available for folks here in Ashtabula County and all across the state. So we're going to give folks just a few more minutes to hop on, but there's links there in the post if you want to see the recipe. Really easy recipe. Also, if you want to learn a little bit more about some of the tax credits too, you can check those out. But very tasty, easy recipe for us.
Three ingredients.
Yeah.
That's it. Quick and easy.
You can freeze them. You can put them in the fridge. They're kind of a classic thing that people enjoy.
You can make them with chocolate as well. Chocolate,
lots of different varieties.
Chocolate,
Yep.
Any kind of chocolate that you want.
But we use butterscotch. You can see some of the recipe link there with some of the different ingredients. And it's actually all right here. So pretty simple. But let's go ahead. Let's get started. Like I said, if you've got questions as we go along, feel free to chat them in, or comments, things like that. I'm happy to help answer any of those questions. But we're making haystack cookies tonight, which is a really simple cookie that combines butterscotch and peanuts and the surprise ingredient, chow mein noodles, which you never really think. Talked to Isaac today at church, and I said, "Yeah, it's got the the chow mein noodle things in there." He said, "I never even thought that was what was in there." So, and if their family's watching, special shout out to the 3 kids who I think might be tuning
Adorable.
in. Yeah,
Precious.
yep. So, I just went over our ingredients. So, what's kind of the first thing? You've already started a little bit.
Yeah. So you can melt the chocolate either in a double boiler, or we have this little thing. It's pretty clever.
You've seen us use this a couple times for easy melting of chocolate or of different ingredients that are needing to be melted pretty fast. But you could also microwave these. You can put them in a boiler on the oven and do them really simple too. So totally up to you.
Just don't want to get the water mixed with the chocolate, otherwise
Yep.
it's going to be really hard. But just once it's melted, which this is already melted.
And it doesn't take very long in this thing, or it wouldn't take very long in a microwave either.
No. So then you just add 1 cup of the peanuts, salted peanuts, or the better, it makes it taste better because you got the sweet chocolate and then the saltiness. So just 1 cup of these, and actually I think we have, these are all generic, and they're still good. But 1 cup. And then you just mix that, and once all that's mixed in, then we add the chow mein noodles, and they kind of break up when you're mixing them in there, which is totally fine.
So you mix
then
them all
they're
together.
more bite size.
Yep.
Yeah.
Huh. And so as Mom's stirring those in, so remember, CAUV is current agricultural use valuation. So that is the farm tax credit that we have available here in Ohio, and that we can give you and folks who are commercially farming. So the key there is commercial farming, commercial use. And there's some qualifications that you have to have with that. But one of the kind of basic underlines, because folks ask it all the time, for example, it even came up today and yesterday, something about Amish folks and do they get certain tax credits, and with the agricultural tax credit, that's one of them potentially, but made sure to tell them, you have to be selling your products. So you can't just be enjoying CAUV because you're using all the different products that you're making, or you're eating your own cows, for example, not selling them. So basic underline is commercial use, commercial activity. Hi, Missy. Good to see you. Feel free to chat any questions. So that's kind of the basic factor with CAUV is a commercial use. So you just stirred in the peanuts.
So yep, peanuts are all stirred in there. And once they're all stirred in, then you just take, 5 ounces of chow mein noodles.
Yep.
And just kind of dump them in there.
More stirring in. Like I said,
stirring.
This is a really easy, simple
Super
recipe.
simple. The kids could make this.
Yeah,
Easy enough
yeah.
for the children.
So with CAUV, the qualifications, commercial, like I said, and then you either have to have 10 acres or more in production. So that could be 10 acres of hay, 10 acres of corn, 10 acres of woodlands. The state of Ohio considers timber, which, fun fact, that's actually our largest agricultural product in the state of Ohio is lumber, is timber.
Interesting.
So, yep, consider 10 acres or more of woodlands. You can have 10 acres of a pond if you're commercially harvesting, farming fish. As long as you're kind of owning that, it's contiguous property. That's the kind of the basic requirement for CAUV. Or if you have, let's say, under 10 acres, and this is a lot, happens a lot here in our county too. You have under 10 acres, but you make an income more than $2,500 a year on average. So if you're selling, cows, for example, but you're only using maybe 3 or 4 acres, but you're making more than $2,500 a year on average, or let's say you've got bees. That's another good example where your bees may only take up an acre, maybe 2, but you're selling the honey and you're making more than $2,500. Then we can get you in the program because you're qualified with the income threshold. Because again, remember, it's commercial farming, so you have to be able to make an income because it's a commercially based based program.
Do you reach out to the families, the farmers, the ones that have?
Nope. Property owners have to work with us, have to reach out to us. That's one of the benefits of like being in a farm bureau, for example, or being involved with different farming organizations. They can let farmers know some of the different credits and those things available. But I think for the most part, your traditional farming families, they know about it. But where we've seen the biggest growth has been those woodlands. Mm-hmm. People owning a whole bunch of woods and taking advantage of the CAUV woodland aspect, which has been a really good thing, because the key here is you're getting a tax credit, and I'll talk a little more about the benefits of that, but it's keeping in production, keeping the property in CAUV, in agricultural production, so it's preserving, and it's using good practices for land management. So there's kind of a win-win on all different factors.
So do you have to every year be cutting down a certain amount of trees, a certain acreage of trees?
Yeah, for woodlands, and we're having our office was invited to speak with the Ohio Farm Bureau next Wednesday on an online webinar on woodland CAUV itself. And we're also actually having a CAUV education session through our office in person next Monday in Jefferson. So you can come learn a little bit more about details. But for the woodland side, as long as you have a management plan and you're following that management plan, that's all that you would actually need.
And so you don't need to present that to you.
Right. Yep. You don't have to be cutting down every year. They may be every 30 years that you'd be commercially harvesting that woodland. Wow. But the key is just that you have a plan, you're keeping to that plan, and you're following it.
So how do you know they're following it?
So we'll actually go out and inspect on the woodland side. We'll inspect maybe every 2 years, for example. But traditional CAUV, to make sure folks are farming, we'll actually go out every year and inspect every parcel. Heather in our office does that to make sure that folks are deserving of the credit that we're giving them because of how big of a credit it is. And I'll get into that. So now we've all stirred everything
so
in.
It's all stirred in. It's ready to just spoon out and
so
enjoy.
So we stirred in the butterscotch and the lo mein and the peanuts and everything.
Yeah, just 3 simple ingredients, and then you can make them as big as or as small as you'd like. But I just kind of use 2 spoons.
And you've definitely probably seen these at parties and things like that.
You know what's this butterscotch? The color this year when we made them for Christmas and even now is lighter.
It's lighter. Yeah. So you spoon them, and it actually they'll start to dry, and it kind of looks like a little haystack, which is why the name. And really simple. So
you can put them in the fridge to dry once you have a tray full, and then they even store in the freezer.
Yeah, you can freeze them.
6
you can
months.
Keep them in the fridge, which is cool. So the credit itself is based on your land. So if you have, let's say, 20 acres of hay, what actually you're taxed on is not the market value of those 20 acres. Let's say the market value is $5,000 an acre. What you're actually taxed on is a formula out of Columbus from the state based on the soil that's beneath that hay.
Oh my
so
goodness,
the state will come up with, let's say, maybe 60, 70 different soil types all throughout the state, and they'll put a value per acre of each of those soil types. So if you have 10 different soil types on those 20 acres, you'll be taxed based on the value of where the soil is and how much the state will assign that. So
how often do they test the soil?
So they don't test the soil. They know what different soils, clay versus things that are mixed versus wetlands versus all those different varieties, and it's all mapped out. And we can actually walk you through what soil you have under your ground, but you're actually then taxed on that value as opposed to the market value, which is typically anywhere between, a 65 to a 90% savings, depending on how strong the market value is, and depending on how low the CAUV values are. And the CAUV values are based off of sales of product, cost of inputs, and it's interesting because it's not, like I said, it's all different types of agriculture. So woodlands to traditional farming to animals,
chickens, fish.
It's all based on the soil underneath, and it's a huge savings. So that's why we make sure that folks that are on the program are deserving it, are actually farming commercially, because remember what I always tell folks with taxes, revenue always stays flat when it comes to local governments. And so that tax savings has to come from somewhere. And with CAUV, it actually comes from the tax district. So if we're putting a savings on one property, well, it's actually the surrounding residential areas that are paying the difference. And that's where we do the tax calculations, and that's where we do all those different rate changes. So CAUV has an impact. It's a big savings for the farmer because we all know that costs are up. That's very expensive to farm. That we really need to protect our local farms, and so we have this tax credit. But making sure then that because of just how big of a savings that is, that it's being applied properly, and that's why we do those inspections every year.
So the farmer doesn't have to. They will if they know about it because it's a savings, but they're not penalized.
No one has to sign up for it. And one of the things with CAUV which is interesting, is that, like I said, it's also kind of a land preservation program, a land management program, because there's kind of an incentive to keep you in the program, keep you farming. If you were to leave the program, you actually have to pay the past 3 years worth of tax savings as a penalty for leaving the program. So like I said, we see, which is called a recoupment. We can see recoupments in the tens of thousands of dollars because over 3 years, that tax savings difference between the land value and the CAUV value could be very, very high. And so you collect a big savings, which is great, unless you decide to either leave the program or the big issue, and there are folks way smarter than me trying to solve this, and my grandparents being a great example of that, are older farmers that can't necessarily farm or continue to farm or have to shrink their operation, or are just from retirement but still have the land, and technically they're not farming anymore. And so how do you then keep them on the program if there's no actual agricultural use? So there's different kind of discussions over how best to do that. Remember, we're creatures of statute, so we can only do what the Ohio Revised Code tells us we can do. But that's one of the kind of incentives to keep farming, or when you sell the property, to make sure that the new owner is going to be farming and continuing to farm, or with woodlands, we'll continue to keep that management plan going just for that preservation.
Well, what if you still live there and you have somebody renting the property?
Yeah, as long as it's farmed, as long as it's in production, that's the important thing.
Doesn't matter who's
Yep.
doing it.
Actually, a majority of our property here in the county is farmed by someone other than the owner.
Oh.
So just because farming is so expensive and it's a huge cost thing, we're seeing more and more of kind of large-scale farming operations, renting out property, for example, and that's perfectly good as long as it's in production. That's the important thing. And like I said, it's oftentimes think of CAUV, people think of big tractors, they think of big operations, but it's also small property owners perhaps, or especially on the woodland side, people that have a good amount of acres of wood, remember over 10 acres, and you actually can hire a forester to come look at your woods, give you a management plan, and often what they require is very simple to do. So that's one sheet. This recipe, and I include the link, like I said, in our post. This link makes recipe makes a lot of these cookies.
Probably 4 dozen at least, but I'm kind of making them bigger, I think.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm bringing them to the office on Tuesday. Remember, we're closed tomorrow for Martin Luther King Jr. Day, but bringing them into the office on Tuesday. So if you want to stop by and get one, maybe you can fill out an application to learn more about CAUV as well. Feel free. But like I said, that's the beautiful thing about these cookies. You can actually put them in the fridge. They last a long time. You can freeze them too.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's kind of the very quick basics of CAUV. Huge tax savings based on the soil type. Tax savings is anywhere between 65 to 95%.
Wow.
And it takes you 3 years to enter. So they really make it a very formal, kind of serious program. It's not like some of our other credits where you can enter immediately or you can qualify very quickly. But you have to spend 3 years farming, or our county, and every county approaches things a little bit differently, but in terms of woodlands, I kind of consider, hey, if you're growing the woods, or the woods are there, you've been engaging in the production of agricultural use. So we enter folks on woodlands immediately, as long as they have a management plan and they're starting to follow it. And that management plan usually is removing grapevines, or grape ropes, the things that hang from the trees. At some point, it probably will be clearing out some of the smaller trees to make room. And then, like I said, folks get a little bit scared when we say, well, we have to commercially timber your property. And all that really means is at some point, and you talk to any forester and they'll tell you this, at some point you've got to thin your trees, you've got to move some things around. Yep. So you're always moving things, you're always planning for different tree changes, and that's commercially timbering, because someone's taking it, you're selling the timber, so it's not as scary of a thing, and it's a huge savings.
And you said it could be every 30 years?
Yep. And it prevents, and why I love the CUV woodland especially, I talk about it a lot, it prevents things like clear cutting, which we all see, which is horrible for the environment, horrible for the property value, horrible for the surrounding area, and it encourages then long-time sustainable land management, which is really important. So that's kind of a quick thing. The application process for CAUV is up until the first Monday in March. And that's a very firm. I unfortunately had a friend of mine last year reach out to me on I think it was the 4th last year. He reached out to me on that Tuesday and said, hey, it's too late. And I said, we legally have not, we can't do anything for you. So it's a very formal time frame. You can get your application in now. Heather in our office is awesome. She might even be watching this right now. She works with folks. Like I said, we have thousands and thousands of acres on CAUV in our county. I posted a picture last year of all the parcels here in our county that were on CAUV, and probably 90% of the county was lit up.
Wow.
It's hard to think. Actually, it's Colebrook, this township
really?
that has the highest proportion of CAUV parcels.
Wow.
All of our southern, but even in the northern part of our county, Conneaut, Ashtabula Township, Saybrook, there's CAUV parcels up there, land that's either in Kingsville, land that's in woodlands, or land that's in actual production. So it's all over. Our winery industry as well. Agriculture is ingrained in our DNA as Ohioans. And this program is a great example of how we help to protect it and provide for the future generations in agriculture.
Did you say how many acres the pond has to be in order to?
So remember, it's 10 acres.
10 acres.
Or an average of $2,500 or more in income each year. So for 3 years, you have to show $2,500. And then moving forward, we would need for your renewal every year for you to show us your receipts that you grossed, that you at least brought in $2,500 or more. So that's why, with ponds, I think we have, and Heather can correct me, but I think we have 2 or 3 pond systems here in the county that actually formally farm fish.
Isn't there one in Pymatuming, if I remember right?
I'm sure that's one of them. I can't remember for sure. So it may be under 10 acres, but they have more than $2,500 in income every year.
Wow.
And so they can qualify for the portion that they use. Same thing with bees, for example.
Oh, true.
Or chickens, or anything that you might consider.
With eggs, the cost of eggs these days.
With the cost of eggs. Yep.
Really quick.
But we're always happy to walk folks through. And like I said, you may know of folks that don't have the program or aren't on it, and they might be of interest. Send them our way. Our website with the link has a lot more information on kind of nitty-gritty of CAUV. There's also things like the Ohio Forest Tax Law, which is also for woodlands. It's a different type of program, but pretty similar. We have things like ag districts, which, if you remember, that kind of isn't the legal protection for farmers in terms of lawsuits and in terms of right-of-way issues or special assessments. So a lot of information there on our website for our agricultural community. And you probably saw too, I've got a podcast out now, trying to do 2 a month. One interviewing a local government professional or someone kind of in the field, and another one focused on our office, the auditor's office, and giving some information on what's happening or kind of more details behind taxes or behind other things as well. Just trying to always promote out, give as much information to you as possible. Feel free to reach out with questions on CAUV if you'd like. I could have done something with dog licenses, but I feel like we've almost killed that thing. But that's still going. The deadline for dog licenses is the last day of January.
And that's a firm deadline then too?
Very firm. And after that deadline, you have to pay a fee of double. So a $12 license becomes $24. If you buy it after January 31st, the last day of January.
And if your dog is lost and it ends up at
yes,
the
if your dog is lost, ends up at the APL, there's a fee of, I want to say $100 to $120 that they charge to get it back. So definitely worth it. Lots of deadlines, lots of events coming up in our office. Stay tuned on my emails if you'd like, Facebook, our website, office website as well. Like I said, 2 education sessions coming up just on CAUV alone. Plus other opportunities to learn, to be engaged with us. I'm always happy to help and keep folks informed. So we appreciate you listening, tuning in, and as always, enjoy.
Any other questions?
Nope, I think we got all the different comments. Great recipe, great, easy thing, tasty. Yeah, very simple.
If you like butterscotch.
Yeah, if you like butterscotch, but you can make them with normal chocolate or vanilla or anything else really that you'd like.
Yeah. You can make them vanilla, white chocolate with raisins, or add some coconut in there. Just mix it up.
Lots of options, M&Ms as well, I feel like. True. So great to make with kids. Very simple party favorite that you can freeze, put in the fridge, keep for quite a while. So thank you. Have a good night. And I think we're done in time for the Ravens-Bengals game, which is starting up. Yeah, starting up here very soon. So thank you. Have a good night.
Have a good night.